What is up, everybody? I'm Jason, this is Freebird Garage, and we are on part 2 of the FXRT assembly on this fairing, getting all those guts shoved back into that fairing and mounted correctly. Hopefully get some wiring done and get this to get on the bike. All right, so let's get to it. So there's 2 cheat codes I've been using to get this bike put back together. One is the service manual from original Harley Davidson for the particular bike. Highly recommend, doesn't matter what bike you're using on for Harley, use the service manual or anything you're working on. Just always nice to have that service manual in your back pocket to make sure you're assembling correctly. But in this case, a lot of it falls back into the parts diagram or the parts catalog for there. So I don't have one physically. They do sell those out there in the wild. That's not something that you would typically go and buy from the dealership. The dealership would have it on hand and use it there, or they would use their computer program. Now there's still one floating out there online, and there's 2 websites. I can't remember the ones I use offhand, but I went ahead and got mine printed out, so I use for this breakout. You guys ever see that before? Highly recommend one of these, because it just gives you the exact number, especially if you're chasing something that doesn't want to fit together, or if you're just questioning something that's going back together. This is the blueprint to make sure that you are right on spec of getting it down to everything. Getting into the nuts and bolts of this, literally the nuts and bolts, I use this diagram to be able to figure out which thread pitch, how long, whatever I need. So I was not guessing. There's way too much guessing on some of the small bolts to go back and forth to the hardware store. I'm not gonna take this whole fairing there. It'd be kind of nice though. Sit there and on a bench and figure out what you need. This made it so that you just punch in the part number that associates, of course, on the part that you need. Type it in there. Usually someone on Harley, or I'm sorry, someone on eBay has it for sale, and they put the specs of the bolts right in the listing. It's easy enough. Take those specs, go to your hardware store, make yourself a list, bam, and you have yourself a nice baggie of parts right there, all stainless steel. So a little bit away from original. We're using stainless steel. A little more expensive, but it's gonna stay nice. If it ever goes to anyone else, you know, they have nice stainless steel bolts holding together, not all nasty and crusty after a while. You can say crisp and clean for the most part. All right, so if you're ever searching for stuff, don't know which parts, highly recommend doing that. There's a couple websites if you start searching for parts manuals on your bikes that will still pop up online. There was like a law, or I'm sorry, what do you want to call it? Like not like a lawsuit, but some kind of law with Harley that they didn't allow any of the dealerships to now ship their parts across essentially their state line of where you're coming from. So they weren't allowing parts to be sold online. I don't know the final details, but back in the day, I was able to buy parts online from different dealerships and ship to me, and now I can't. And there was a particular dealership when I started this project that had a lot of the parts, and I thought this was gonna be cake when I started ordering them, but the place was over in Europe after I started putting it in my cart, and I realized down below in small words it said will not ship outside of their country. And that really sucked, because there were some really still to this day hard to find parts sitting in this dealership. I couldn't remember the European country that it came from, but I wish I could just fly over there, grab them, and then bring them back. It would be a gold mine for FXRs. So if you're interested, message me, I'll tell you which one it is. So maybe if you're over in Europe, we got friends in Europe that'll ship you some parts, it would be awesome to get some of these. All right, these are OEM FXRT parts that are extremely hard to find. And in particular, I have some pieces to go over that I still cannot find and get, and they're not ones that essentially anyone is just selling out there in the standard aftermarket or Instagram or Facebook marketplace. All right, so let's dive into the first part. We're gonna get into getting this column first put back together. That's my goal. So this little piece is our main hang up from the last time. Essentially, this is gonna hold our control board, and then that's going to allow us to start mangling the whole dash inside of this FXRT fairing put back together. All right, we'll grab the parts, get the bolts, show you guys what I'm talking about. So there are 2 hidden bolts right up here that we're gonna slide through, and these bolts right here are the well nuts for the windshield, pretty obvious, but in particular from the manual, these are machine bolts, same thread pitch and everything, just stainless steel. That will plop right into there for each side. All right, flip this around. For some reason, they decided to not make this threaded, so you kind of awkwardly have to hold these down and get these started by hand. And there are, of course, lock nuts, so they're not just gonna freely spin all the way down the bottom. Just gotta get these rolling on. Good to go there. Not reefed on. Don't want to crack the plastic. That's not going anywhere. All right, let's grab our dash column. This is our main control board for the RT fairing right there. Works. I got all the wiring figured out prior on the bike. Mine was left still attached to the bike, thankfully. It's a crucial part, but not crucial if you're ever going to use the original components on the RT fairing. But if you decide to go back into it, or the other ones you've had is bad, these are kind of a pain to track down. They're usually with the whole harness, and you're usually paying premium for that harness because it has all the extra wiring for all the gauges and dashes, all that good stuff. So if you see one of these laying around, scoop it up, probably resell it for a good 100 bucks, maybe 150 bucks online, maybe up to 300 if you have the whole harness. Still worth some money, so don't just throw them away. All right, let's get on the bike. Also, if you can, label your bolts. It's a lot easier to know which bolt goes where by having the right part numbers to match to your diagram. I'm gonna fish all this down here first. First one went smoothly. These are actually self-tapping ends, so that makes it way easier. Bam! We're secured there. Let's get our dash on. For the service parts manual, this is supposed to be in like a bracket. Obviously, for vibrations, that would be nice, but I don't have anywhere to hook this up. I haven't seen where the original one would be riveted. That's what this is supposed to be for, riveted on. So we're gonna skip that and just finagle our gauge system in now. And this is an all original one that I found off of eBay. Came all together. Like I said, I've tested this prior, so all this stuff works, which is great. That was a little bit scary. Didn't know if it did or not. It was not cheap, but to have it all together and to have these still legible was awesome. This has 80,000 miles on it. The current bike doesn't even come close to that, so we're just gonna use the original ones on here because how rusty it is, I don't feel like destroying anything just to swap it out. All right, they really want you to smash this up against these here. Let me think this through before we destroy this here. There is zero slack, so we're just going to reattach these now here and then fish it on. All right, we're actually using OEM bolts too, just to make sure I have the right length. These ones I did track down offline. And this fitment is crap. There we go. Oof. I think it's rubber, man. Okay. Get one of these holes started here. Alright, I'm gonna save us a little time and get all these buttoned up. Gauge setup's all hooked up. These bolts were actually a little bit easier than I thought they would. Just a tight fit after you get in there. And our trip still works on there. Look at that. Boom, boom, boom. Whichever miles we want to add to it. Just kidding. You just track the miles. Alright. So, good there. Start working on the center portion. I gotta figure out for the radio. And then the mounting, it's gonna be all in one piece. Alright, just to get this radio in, there's like a 2-part bracket that has to be assembled. And it is extremely tight inside this fairing. So I'll show you guys. We have this that goes in, holds the standard radio. Then this goes on top like that. And then like that. So we gotta get all that snugged into that fairing. All right, so let's see how far we get. Starting off with the first piece, we'll try this first. All right, lock that one down. Slide our bottom bracket up. There we go. Okay, let's work on getting the light and X bracket in there. All right, well, a bit of a problem. The radio wiring is a bit of a mess and it doesn't seem to match up with what I have. So I gotta see if there's been things that are cut off, sliced, to see if this is even gonna work now. Unfortunately, I thought I figured that out prior, which I knew the turn signals, the gauges and all that, but I assumed the extra plug that was there was going to work for here, and there's one extra plug that I don't know what it goes to. So I don't know if it goes to the controls on the actual bikes. I know you control the radio through there, which would be key when I'm riding. I want to be able to have that feature on there, small, but it's having that OEM that I still want to keep. And before I go and lock all this stuff in and then have to tear all back apart because I have to match up the wiring, go through, I just need to stop what I'm doing and make sure I do this correctly and go back to the wiring. So I have all the bolts, pieces, we can get this all back together, but I need to clarify before I just have to redo something I just did, and then we can get the fairing back on, all right? So, but for now, that about wraps me on this one. I would greatly appreciate it if you could hit the subscribe button, tap that like, press the notification, leave a comment below and tell what you think. And for those that already subscribed, thank you, and as always, stay free. I'll catch you guys later. Peace.